we are committed to recapturing the flag of the conservative movement and providing a forum to figure out what comes next.
Men cannot improve a society by setting fire to it. They must seek out the old virtues and bring them back into the light.
The American conservative was first on all the major issues they were part of the 2016 election.
Our keynote speaker tonight is a man who really needs no introduction, a true American patriot, but I'll say a few words anyways. As all of you should know, Jeff Sessions served as the 84th Attorney General of the United States from 2017 to 2018. And prior to that tenure as Attorney General, he was the U.S. Senator from Alabama for 20 years. He had a distinguished legal career before that, first as a practicing attorney in Russellville, Alabama, and then in Mobile. And then following a 2-year stint as Assistant United States Attorney for the Southern District of Alabama, Jeff Sessions was nominated by President Reagan in 1981 and confirmed by the Senate to serve as United States Attorney for the Southern District of Alabama. That was a position he held for 12 years. It's a long and distinguished career, and there's a lot of Alabama in there. And that is perhaps the thing that I admire most about our keynote speaker tonight. He's a proud Alabamian who understands that we are part of this great country only through the concrete local communities, people, and attachments in our specific places. You shape your country best by loving the local people and the place that shapes you. And I think that there's no one better to learn that from than Jeff Sessions. So I'm incredibly honored tonight to have Senator Sessions with us. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Jeff Sessions.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be with you. Thank you very much, please. It's so nice of you, and it's an honor to be here. Back in the Mayflower, I used a joke here one time. It got a lot of laughs. Probably forgotten now, but I hope there are no Russians in this audience tonight. Rachel, great congratulations. I think she's one of the great young conservatives in the country, don't you? And Dr. McDougall, that's such a great remarks. And I will tell you, Mary and I were at Amherst, and pretty rough place. Hadley Arcus, I think the last conservative, at least the young Republicans told me, that had been on the faculty had retired, and that some wealthy supporter offered them $1 million to Amherst if they would hire a conservative of their choice, in which President Biddy, or whatever her name was, rejected, So apparently there are no conservatives left now at Amherst, and we were not well received, I can tell you that. Well, it's good to be here with my wife, Mary. We're so appreciative of the opportunity to serve in public life. And my last election, where I was elected, my last election to the Senate, I had no opponent, Republican or Democrat. So I guess I was due for something the next time around. The American Conservative magazine is one of the most important publications of our times, and I want to congratulate you for your success and for many more years. I do want to say I'm pleased to have my 2 daughters here with me tonight and their husbands. They're doing their part for the future of the Republic with their 6 children total, 6 of our 10 grandchildren. So many people say, well, Sessions, you're part of part of this movement, this new Republican agenda before anyone else. But that's really not true, Emil. This magazine, the American Conservative, was first on all the major issues they were part of the 2016 election cycle. There's just no doubt about it. And you've made an invaluable contribution to the public discourse. You're educating while entertaining. You're welcoming diverse views, discussing without being disagreeable, and advocating with authenticity for the principles that have made America the greatest, freest, most prosperous, most powerful nation on earth. And now we've just got to keep it that way, don't we? So that's the challenge at this moment. And it was at your founding 19 years ago. The editors wrote then that I read that founding editorial, and it declared, quote, "We believe conservatism to be the most natural political tendency." The most natural political tendency, rooted in man's taste for the familiar, for family, for faith in God. And we believe that true conservatism has a predisposition for the institutions and mores that exist, the ones that already exist, that have been proven over time. You talked about being a sense of place. I remember when I was in college in the 60s, they had this idea that we had an identity crisis, Dr. McDougall. You probably remember that, an identity crisis. And I said, I didn't have an identity crisis. I was Jeff Sessions from Hibbert, Alabama, and that's all. That's who I was. But we are, in a very mobile world today, and that's important. I remember being in Israel with Ariel Sharon, and he invited us over to his house, a group did, and he talked about how important that was to him in this sense of some permanence. His family had been there before him, and I shared with him the way it is in the South. I don't think it's that way out west or in the north. People talked about a ranch in the west or a farm in the north. In the South, it's a place. And so it was our family place, the Sessions place. It's been there since before the Civil War. The McMurphy place, the Woolley place, the Kennedy place, the Reeves place. That's a place. And it's more than just a business enterprise. But I do think we got to work hard in this culture to make sure we strengthen a sense of identity and confidence in our people. I remember you mentioned Russell Kirk. I think the most formative book I said a number of years ago that I read was Kirk's book, then known, I think they changed the name of it, but it was Enemies of the Permanent Things. And it was just like an eye-opener to me to understand the concept of authentic literature and what's normative and what's abnormal literature. Well, anyway, these ethos set us apart from the radicals and the totalitarians who seek power and control and submission from people who don't agree with them. Their hubris and self-importance lead them to believe that their solutions, their values, their commands are right and just and imperative. Thus, the ends justify the means in their minds. And this means because their ends are always justified and at almost any cost. David Horowitz, the great writer and conservative, former radical himself, former editor of Ramparts magazine, diagnosed the problem. He said, they always want more power. They have this vision and it doesn't develop. They want more power, so it'll develop. And when it doesn't develop and fails, they want more power to force their square peg in the round hole, to force their agenda. That's not the American way. That's not the way we operate. Their vision presumes that all knowledge, customs, all beliefs, and all people that preceded them and those that value those who preceded are worthless, and they must be canceled. They're not to be respected. So our conservatism fundamentally rejects that dangerous pretension of knowing better and entitlement to impose a truth, your truth, on everybody else. And against their will in America. They get to impose their agenda their values, their insights on us in this great country. That's not the way it was founded, and that's not the way I was raised, and I don't think that's the way you were raised either. So, our conservatism is not an ideology. It's, as Emil said, a cast of mind. It's the way of looking at the world. It does not seek to impose, but to guide through freedom, meaning, debate, and intellectual questioning. So in contrast, the humility of conservatives is rooted in knowing that we don't know everything, and what's best for everybody, we just don't know that. That we ourselves, we understand, are flawed, and that we are a part of human nature. We're fallen beings who can and should learn from our forebears. And when we depart from them, we better be dadgum sure we're doing the right thing. This wisdom comes not from theory, but honest experience. It is our great inheritance that mankind has tried many things and found them wanting, and discovered others and have treasured them. That inheritance is not locked away or bestowed upon a select few to jealously guard, but is diffused among us all in different ways and in different times as our traditions and beliefs. Our self-appointed betters today, be they radical activists or global masters of the universe, as I like to call them, or the intelligentsia and the media and academia, are intent on stamping out anything does not conform to their truth. Ironic, isn't it, that many of the self-proclaimed tolerant don't tolerate any ideas but their own. Wrong that they are, too. So fortunately, generations of our forebears built and nurtured a system rooted in our Constitution that gives common people a voice and the ultimate power in this great republic. Let's talk about what the American people think about some of the biggest issues facing our country today. I came to Washington. Mary and I formed the first college Republican club in the history of Huntington College in Montgomery. And I was state chairman of the college Republicans and the young Republicans and a Nixon presidential elector, and I was part of the team. And I believed in the Republican team and worked hard over the years to be a faithful team member to try to advance conservative values. But I began to encounter in the immigration debate some of the things that worried me a lot. You hear constantly from the media and experts that the American immigration system is broken, but what they mean is it doesn't let enough people in, and they say, well, let us fix it. We'll take care of it. We know better. And their radical policies would be no fix, really, but to scrap U.S. sovereignty and sell it for parts. The deal was, and this was the real debate about it, in my opinion, so true, that we get amnesty for 11 million people. They get a green card, a guaranteed pathway to citizenship, and we'll promise you we'll fix the illegality in the future. Chuck Grassley, who was there in 86, that was exactly the message in 86. He had said repeatedly back in Iowa, I will never agree to that again. Because the enforcement doesn't occur, don't you see? And when you do another amnesty of monumental proportions, you only say to the world, if you can just get into our country illegally, we'll have another amnesty for you before long. It's a magnet for increased illegality. That was not what the American people wanted when they said they'd like to reform immigration, I got to tell you. A poll was conducted that found that this year that 71% of Americans found it unacceptable to illegally immigrate to the United States. And for over 2 decades, Gallup has found that at least 2/3 of Americans want immigration levels to stay the same or be reduced. And that's without, I think, the American people knowing how many there are. Look, in this country, we're open to immigration. We admit 1.1 million people every year to permanent legal status. We have some 800,000 here on work visas and more than that on other visas. We're one of the most generous countries in the world, in the history of the world, in immigration. But the American people are good and decent. They believe that their nation is a sovereign entity, that its borders should be secure, and that our immigration policy should serve the national interest, the people's interest. And in that, they're moral and just and right. And when people come illegally, it's not convenient for them when they get caught. It's unfortunate that they attempt to enter our country illegally, and there's no really easy way to fix this problem until you send a clear message abroad that the border's not open. I got to say, President Trump worked on it. We worked on it. Department of Homeland Security, of course, had the biggest responsibility. And progress was being made. A lot of progress was being made. The numbers were down significantly. And in one of the most colossal blunders of public policy in our nation's history, the Obama administration gave it away. And they made this circumstances worse than it was before. And it's been a terrible tragedy for America. It's going to be difficult to put that genie back in the bottle, to move back forward to a lawful system. It can be done. We learned a lot in the last 4 years about how to get it done, but it's not going to be easy. And it's a tremendous failure. And a great nation, wealthy and advanced, as Milton Friedman said one time, you can't have open borders when you have a welfare state. And we got to control our borders, and the people know it. In this next election, some people need to suffer. They need to lose their seats as a result of this blunder that they have put up with and actually supported it in many ways. Well, on foreign policy, this magazine from its beginning talked about the need for realism in foreign policy. People are very concerned about the endless wars that don't produce acceptable results, but incur tremendous human and financial cost. Well, you know about the Afghan and Iraq, how that transformed from protecting American interests, and I supported it, to some sort of democratic vision, a Wilsonian naivete about the nature of the world we live in. And it's been a tremendously painful thing for me to watch. I do believe that I and other members of the Congress did not think deeply enough about what we were doing. Really? You know, conservatives, what do they say? Are you sure this is going to work? Are you sure? How does it end? What's your goal? How much is it going to cost? Not enough of those things were asked effectively. And I think that's something that should never happen again. And we have high ideals and we want to be a world leader, but we can't be the world's policeman. We can't fix every problem, every place in the globe. That's for sure. You know, one of the things that bothered me the most, that was such a dramatic failure, was what happened in Syria. I remember the Obama administration somehow got it in their head that this little revolution that was ongoing, that Assad was set about to crush, could win, and he could be removed, and we'd elect a democratic leader in Syria. And I'd by then gotten dubious about that, and What happened in Syria? Really, what happened? So we started supporting the revolutionaries. They were quickly taken over by the terrorists and other anti-agenda people in Syria, and not Democrats. I remember in a hearing, I asked, and another senator asked, General Austin, who was in charge of training, now the Secretary of Defense, training the democratic forces in Syria. And I asked him, how many people had been trained? And his answer was 7. That made the New York Times, I got to say. It should have. And I had opportunity not too long ago to talk with a Greek businessman who went to Syria a good bit to do business. He's now a professor at a state university in the southeast. And he said he used to go to Aleppo all the time. And he said you could buy a drink in Aleppo. And if you didn't give Assad trouble, they left you alone. You could do business, and the economy was doing rather well. So what happens today? Our dream to make Syria better. Good intentions is not enough. You need, in your leaders and your members of Congress, you need people who are realistic, who you can depend on to make good judgments and not commit us to activities that do more harm than good. In Syria, several years ago, there were at least 500,000 dead as a result of this adventure. Maybe more, probably a good bit more now. There were millions displaced. They poured into Europe, causing all kinds of turmoil there. Cities were in rubble. The Russians gained more influence than they had before. Assad is still in power. Now, how could you possibly not understand the colossal humanitarian disaster that was? And much certainly can be said about Libya and, of course, Afghanistan and Iraq. You got to be serious. You expect your leaders in Washington to understand those things, to ask the right questions, and not go off on these kind of dreams. So the American conservatives also been a strong voice on trade and protecting the American people's interests. Good trading policies, properly executed, can make life better for our partners, trading partners, and the United States. That's what we need to look for, and we ought not to accept or tolerate policies that are detrimental to the people we as government leaders serve. We serve the people. We don't serve the GDP. We don't serve some global business. That's not our religion. That's not our religion, I can tell you. And, well, we've always been free trade. No, we haven't always been free trade. Have you heard of Hamilton and Washington? You know, the biggest building in Mobile and in seacoast towns all over the United States in the early 1800s was the customs house where they collected the tariffs. I'm not saying we need a whole bunch of tariffs, but we'd like to have a free trade relationship. But you can't sit still and say, well, we're only going to buy ships from the lowest bidder. The United States can't produce ships. Expect to be a great nation and can't produce ships, can't have a steel industry, can't have an automobile industry. It's going to have our technology being bought up and transferred to some low-wage country. Maybe not only an economic competitor, but an adversary militarily, a threat to our national security. We want Huawei to run our 5G system in the United States of America. At some point, you've got to defend security interest as well as the job interest of American people. So then they came up with the TPP. I called it a nascent European Union. And the dadgum thing got like 70-something votes on the first vote in the Senate. Republicans and Democrats. President Obama was pushing it. Republicans were pushing President Obama to push it. And I began to look at that thing, and it worried me. And so there were, 9 countries, and each country got one vote. One vote. Sultan of Brunei gets one vote. The President of the United States gets one vote. And we have a dispute over trade. They have this commission that's supposed to settle it. And I told President Trump, and that's what I'm sure he already thought so, but my view was, well, let's just Xerox most of the trade agreement and have a Xerox copy and add a few lines to it for the Sultan of Brunei and sign it. And if he violates the rule, we'll just stop the deal with him. We don't have to go to some group and have a vote by Vietnam or somebody to decide whether we're conducting good trade policy. I mean, we're the greatest trading economy in the world. We don't have to submit ourselves to that kind of oversight. Now there are a couple other things. I won't keep y'all, it's too late already, but gosh, crime. I've been involved in the criminal justice system for years. When Reagan got elected, he got elected on crime, in case y'all have forgotten. Nobody thought he was going to end the Soviet Union in 1980. He was sick of being run over by criminals and being afraid and having to put burglar bars on middle-class homes. So it started. It took about 15 years, but the homicide rate in America, which had more than doubled in the 60s and 70s, started going down. It dropped over half by the mid-90s, and there were actually some bipartisan support for it. And so we made progress there. All of that's been forgotten. All of that ended. This woke crowd that wants to defund police, think they arrest too many criminals. We got too many people in jail. This is a dangerous philosophy. I warned police professionals all over the country, warned that these strategies would not work, and we would see a surge in crime. And protecting the American people is a core responsibility of government. And it's particularly important for our minority communities and our poor communities. They're the ones that are most often victims of crime. And when homicides drop by over half, that's good. That's good for them. That's government finally getting around to doing what it's supposed to be doing. So, sure enough, the surge has developed after these policies started occurring, more than I even imagined. It's been a total catastrophe. It's going to be so hard to fix this. There's damage. It's going to be difficult to rectify. And of course, most of you probably think the president fixes crime, but a lot of you don't. Really, police departments are products of the mayor of Chicago and the mayor of Baltimore, the mayor of St. Louis, the mayor of Birmingham. Police departments are local things. 85% of law officers are state and local. So this mindset of anti-police, and we're doing too much on crime, spread particularly in those jurisdictions. There were 4,500 more murders in 2020 than in 2019, a 20% increase already this year. In addition to that, there was a 29% increase nationwide, 29% increase nationwide in 1 year in homicides. Maybe certainly the largest single increase since the FBI started data in 1960. There was a 35% increase in homicides in the 70 biggest cities. Many of them, as you know, are very woke cities. A 12% increase in aggravated assaults. Police arrests, they said we were arresting too many people, right? Are down 25% in 2020 alone. They're down 50% in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, and a 72% decline in stops and searches in Philly, and they had 500 murders in 2020. Police retirements are up 45% nationwide since the Floyd riots. And there are huge vacancies now in most police departments. And it's hard to get the talent we used to be able to get because they feel denigrated. They feel disrespected. And they know it's a growing danger to be out on the streets. So the progressives were warned, did not listen. Their ideology, their vision, their truth had to be implemented no matter what the professionals said. And this has been a huge price. And polling shows that 93% of inner city residents want more or the same amount of policing. 93%. I guess that means 7% want less. 68% of Southside Chicago residents want more police. 72% of African Americans are satisfied with their local police. There's much else that we might say about that. There's much that we could say about freedom of speech, but I don't think y'all need to hear me out on that. But I'll just conclude with these thoughts. While these betters control so many powerful institutions in our country, the government, academia, the media, big business, certain big business at least, the American people, in their great wisdom on the issues I've just discussed and others, are conservative. They're realistic. They've got common sense. The American people want a lawful system of immigration that serves the national interest. They don't want to see our borders abolished or our citizenship or our sovereignty. They want strong America that acts with restraint around the world and with wisdom and with care and with realism. Professor McDougall asked me about Trent Lott. I remember telling Trent Lott I just read the book about the Vulcans. You know, they were basically the neocons. He said, typical Trent. He said, well, I kind of like the old conservatives myself. So the American people want us to trade with the world. They're not against trade, but they want it done fairly. And the American interest to be protected against cheating, and that certain security interests of the United States and certain products like drugs and computer systems need to be protected in the United States. They don't need to be run by some hostile power or possible hostile power. Americans want to be safe in their homes, on their streets, and in their communities, and they expect it of government. They want to be able to live and move without fear of violence or vice. And Americans treasure their own rights and that of their neighbors to speak, to believe, and worship as they see fit. We're Americans. They don't tell us what to say, what to speak, what religious faith, and how we express it. That's not what Jefferson and Madison fought for and won fighting for. So, and these elites are in the minority. While Madison warned against a tyranny of the majority, our nation is now plagued by a tyranny of the minority. How worse is that? This special interest insiders intend on suppressing the views of the rest of us, and that's why the charge of this magazine, Emil and team, the American Conservative, is so important. American people's instincts are right, but these instincts and the wisdom that they've accomplished over the years and gained has to be intellectually honed and publicly defended intellectually so we can win these great battles today. This magazine and this group here today are doing serious work. Without that kind of intellectual effort, the team will be outnumbered and the leftists will continue to take charge and throughout our country. Thank you for the honor of letting me be with you. I appreciate your beliefs and your courage and the willingness to stand up against this mindset of the left that seems to be dominating throughout the country in so many ways. You're doing the right thing. Keep it up, and God bless.
Thank you so much, Senator Sessions, and to both of our award winners tonight, congratulations. And thank you all for joining us here this evening. We have big ambitions at the American Conservative to become the definitive magazine of the right, to chart the course for where the conservative movement and the country goes from here. So I'd encourage you all to join us, whether that's by becoming a member of the American Conservative at theamericanconservative.com, by your financial support, by writing for us, or even by just sharing our content across your networks. We need all of you as part of this movement as we rebuild the right in this country. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you especially to our financial supporters tonight, to our organizational sponsors. It's been great being with all of you, and good night. Thank you.